the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 109, recorded Friday, September 20th, 2013. Inconceivable.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. It's time for AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. Yes, they still allow me to host this silly little show. How are you? Thanks so much for listening, downloading, streaming it, as it were. With us this week is George Tucker, the engineering coordinator for World Stage. How are you, brother?
All right. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Also, we have a newbie with us this week. His name is Nick. I almost said Nick. Never mind. Nick Miller. He is from Onsite AV. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, sir. Actually, I almost said Nick Nolte, so that was why I stopped. There was a vision in my head of him and his mugshot. So this week we're going to talk about Shure and some cool training that they have going on. A plug fest that involves some fiber and furniture. Yay, because we all need furniture stuff. I don't know. It's an interesting story, trust me. This comes to us, the specific story, though, the first one we're going to kick it off with, is another passing we had. Dr. Ray Dolby, founder and director emeritus of Dolby Laboratories, passed away. George, this is the second one we've had in the last month. First it was Dr. M.R. Bose, and now Dr. Ray Dolby. First question is kind of the obvious one. Talk for a second about the impact that Dolby had on the AV industry.
Well, gosh,
briefly.
How do you sum that up? I mean, you know that the man has had such an influence when he, of course, shows up in all movies, Spinal Tap being referenced.
Yeah.
What is Dolby? What did he do? Okay, Dolby originally did basically making things quieter. How about that? He made things quieter. And if you don't know what Dolby really did with at least in the tape days, is that it compressed audio signals to a point where they were down lower than one would expect into the noise floor or the noise of the actual natural tape. And then when you expanded it through this expansion process, it actually lifted it further away from the noise and gave you a much higher signal-to-noise ratio, at least the way it was perceived. Of course, he's done a lot more since then, him and his organization with Dolby Sound on home surround sound theaters and things like that, which I don't think much of it would have happened without Dolby's input or his influence into making the things sound right. It is a consumer side, and Dolby, who was readily going into the professional world and changed all that.
All right, Nick, as I mentioned, this is the second passing we've had, both with Bose passing away and now Dolby. Who is our modern day? I mean, who is the modern day Dolby? Who do we have maybe in the ranks who are up and coming and can fill the shoes that these two gentlemen left?
You know, I'm not sure that we have a singular person that can fill those roles and be a household name like Bose and Dolby were. The closest I could come up with would be maybe George Feldstein with Crestron. He, obviously being the founder of Crestron, growing it from the bottom to where it is today, that would be the closest thing I could come up with today.
Well, do you think, though, I mean, Feldstein is, yes, as far as an innovator, but he's not really a household name. He's a household, he's an AV quarters name. I mean, we all know who he is.
Right, and that's the difficulty in naming someone, because Bose and Dolby were both able to achieve something that a lot of people in audio video haven't been able to achieve, and that's make their name a household name that consumers and everyone can recognize instantaneously. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm trying to think of one.
Well, I was thinking of maybe, is it John Meyer from Meyer Sound? Is it his first name is John, right?
I believe it is, yeah.
I was thinking somebody like him. I mean, somebody who's their name is their company, and the company is their name type thing. The same way with Dolby and Bose. The only other person I could think of is George Lucas with THX.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Although THX is not is not his name, but it is it is a household name ish of sorts. I mean, when you go to the theater and you see that the THX sound and any Pixar movie you watch, you have the little THX test sound going on. Depending on which one you're watching, they always do something fun with the sound. So that's the only other one that I could think of. I don't know, but yeah, it is sad. Sad for him.
Well, it's a rare thing that someone of that stature gets into the public consciousness.
Yeah,
and they've done it because they affected, is that the right word? So much of what audio and video is to consumers, even if they weren't on the very high end, they knew about it. Even if they didn't understand what it did, they knew it made it better.
Yeah, and
right? It's like that BASF ad, right? We don't make we make it better.
Yeah, sorry, BASF for you kids. That's a tape manufacturer. Good
more than that.
night.
They're doing more than that. They have commercials everywhere. They're a multi-industrial, multi-corporate something.
Yes, but the one you're referring to, I think, is a tape ad, if I'm not mistaken. So, all right, moving on from Installation International. Easy for me to say. Polycom is NATO's unified communications choice across Europe and North America. Here's the question for you guys, and I'm going to ask. We'll start with you, Nick. Does it say something about Polycom and maybe some of their security or their real presence platform, the fact that an international organization like NATO has put all their eggs in this one basket and said, you know what, we're going with Polycom? And does it say something about Polycom, or does it say something more about Cisco/Tandberg?
Well, obviously, it's a big win for Polycom to have that notch on their belt and be able to brag about that one for a while. I think it speaks to a bigger picture. There's a lot of trepidation right now with all the different web conferencing platforms coming up, and is it going to usurp the traditional video conferencing players? And I think it just reinforces that there is still a huge need for highly reliable, highly secure video conferencing technologies.
Is that what it is, though, the security of it? I mean, obviously NATO is concerned about security. You were talking about military and movements here and the geopolitical state that we're in currently. Is that what they're looking for, though, more than anything?
Oh, absolutely. The fact that it's standards based and can operate with multiple vendors in the same field. And just the fact that it has tried and true encryption capabilities, it's paramount to organizations like NATO.
Mr. Tucker, what does it say about Polycom that the NATO is relying on them for their secure video conferencing?
Well, I think there's twofold here. One is what you guys were talking about, which is the plethora of off-the-shelf or downloadable software-only systems not being as secure or safe. Just look at the Zimmerman trial down in Florida when they were trying to depose a witness and they kept getting interrupted. Does anyone remember that one? Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
During the trial, during the trial, they had several phone calls trying to come in. I guess somebody was trying to prank the whole thing. But so that alone, as you said, Nick, is a major reason you want to stay with a dedicated system. As to them comparing to the others, Polycom's been in government for a long time, and they're sort of the go-to name. Beyond that, I think they have the wherewithal to make sure that they have high speed and secure. So all those factors together probably is a win-win for them. They have a consumer line, but I don't think that really matches into this at this point.
Well, maybe, and I may be being naive, and I'll admit that on the outset here. But in my head, I see Cisco in the acquisition of Tandberg, in their movement into VC. Most, from my perspective, again, most network administrators view Cisco as the go-to, and so that's why I'm a little surprised, I guess, at the Polycom announcement here that it's Polycom and not Cisco. Or is that just me being naive, and that the fact that the people that are concerned about security still haven't gotten on the bandwagon or still haven't gotten the recognition that, hey, you know what, Cisco's doing this too?
Well,
Yeah, we've seen Cisco make some moves lately that weren't exactly what some would consider standards friendly. So I think Polycom being committed to the H.323 video conferencing standard probably played a big role in this. With as many endpoints as you can imagine NATO needing to communicate with, that's going to be a big deal to them.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, no, actually, it was something around what Nick was going to say. It's a very interesting factor that I think Cisco has too far of a reach into the IT world to be trusted, if you ask me. Regardless that Tamberg is a name that has a good history and reliability and has some of the same features and core engineering, but I think that might work against them because Cisco is not seen by a lot of IT people beyond their backbone capabilities. Look, they bought Linksys. So what does that say about it, and how do you differentiate that quality when you're buying all of these consumer type brands and then you buy Tandberg, which really isn't a consumer brand? I think there might be something there where someone instantly goes, well, Cisco bought it. I don't know.
Wow, so almost like a Cisco backlash, a Cisco black eye when they purchase you.
Yeah, it could be. And again, I'm not trying to say anything against them at this point. I don't know, but I could see that happening, especially with all the other acquisitions they've had and then dumped, and maybe that's even part of it. Cisco's bought a lot and dumped a lot, sort of Microsoft or Apple-like for a couple of years now. Like, oh, we liked it, no, go away. Or more appropriately, Facebook, who bought lots of software things and then said, no, we're going to kill that.
What are you talking about? I love my flip phone, my flip camera.
Yeah, there you go. Or, we can even talk about things like FriendFeed, which was a very good technology that still exists and still out there, but they bought it, made Microsoft Lite, and then Facebook Lite, and said, the medicine's getting to me, and then said, well, that didn't work out 2 months in, bye-bye, and just killed it. And I was like, well, okay.
Well, but they could also do, what Microsoft did when they purchased Skype, check one, we're still working. We use Skype here. So, they've pretty much, for the most part, haven't, with the exception of updating it, they haven't really screwed with it that much. Honestly, I was expecting, every few minutes on a Skype call to be interrupted with a Microsoft ad of some sort, but that has yet to happen. So.
Well, and there's something to be said for not putting all your eggs in one basket. If, and I'm speculating here, if NATO relies on Cisco's backbone networking equipment, maybe they want to use a different vendor for their video conferencing infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, from AVNetwork.com, a plug fest, an impromptu, actually, as the writer puts it, an impromptu plug fest. Happened with some AV stuff, specifically the Fiberplex optical converter for AVB. It worked, is the whole gist of the story. George, are we getting to the point with AVB where, and not just Twisted Pair, because that's been primarily the infrastructure for it. Are we getting to the place where fiber is becoming more and more needed, I guess, for AVB?
Well, I would think so, yeah. It's funny because a lot of people I talked about AVB either talk about it in very precise environments, which are in installations, mostly corporate, but some residential, and in a live sound environment, a la Yamaha's Dante, or Yamaha using Dante. And those are very limited scope kind of things, and they usually don't run very far. Yes, I know you talk to a sound guy, I'm throwing at a couple thousand feet, whatever, but not in the way that we're talking here, especially when they're talking about where this was done in Vegas and some of these bigger installations. You're talking not thousands of feet, but miles.
Absolutely.
Right? Which fiber can do fairly well. And I think it's a natural extension. It has to be. Copper's great. Cat 5's great for certain kinds of installations, but once you get to these big boys, it's big thing. Has anyone been to the Las Vegas Convention Center? I mean, you've been to the Orlando one. That's big. The Las Vegas one outshines it, overwhelms it, consumes it.
well, not just the convention center, the hotels. I mean, that's the one thing that the first time I was in Vegas was actually at an Infocom a few years ago, and I was just flabbergasted at the scope and size of the hotels. You're right, George. Even if you're going, floor to floor, you are talking about miles.
Yeah, and then there's the conversion process. It here says you're getting one type of AVB and saying I have to connect it to another network. This, I think, translates well even into the disparate AVB systems that may or may not be out there, having a way to interconnect at some point. And there's no translator here, but I think because they're supposed to be following a common protocol, this may be a way of connecting different ones together and easing the transition and the path for AVB.
Well, and the one thing about that though, the testing lab that they have out east will help stuff like that, whether it's disparate ones or not. Once you have that AVB stamp, this works. Not this impromptu plug fest notwithstanding, that is actually the one place where the AVB consortium has said, you know what, you want to make sure that your stuff works, send it out to us, and we'll put our little stamp of approval on it. Nick, are we at AVB's development stage where we're going to start talking about different, like George said, different infrastructure capabilities because of the need of places like Vegas and obviously other large convention venues?
Absolutely. It's the natural progression of things. And outside of the distance limitations of copper, you have newer buildings that are going up that have plenty of fiber going up the building vertically, but not necessarily a whole lot of copper. So I think this gets AVB one step closer into mainstream adoption to be able to say, okay, we've got 25 strands of fiber available for you, but we don't have any copper. What can you do for us?
If you're buying 25 strands of copper, it better come with something, because I wrote a blog post a few weeks ago. I love fiber. Do not misunderstand. I absolutely love fiber, but holy cow, it's expensive. Actually, I'll ask you guys both this, and Nick, we'll start with you. When will we get to the point where fiber is ubiquitous and fiber is the go-to, not only in installations but also in price? Because the one thing about fiber is not only is the infrastructure on the expensive side when you compare it to copper. Yes, it can go farther. I get that. But also the endpoints are markedly more expensive. When will we get to the point where you can go out and run out to Lowe's and buy 1,000 spool for $200?
I think that's the million-dollar question in our industry. I think different manufacturers have been waiting for that day for years and years and years. There's a major manufacturer that every time we get a visit from their rep, that all they want to talk about is their fiber extenders and fiber translators. But the cost structure just isn't there yet. At least in our house, we're not running distances that absolutely require it, and we don't have the security constraints that require fiber. So obviously with cost savings, copper is our go-to. When it's going to happen, I don't know. I've been waiting at least 5 to 8 years for someone to answer that question, and it still doesn't seem to be on the horizon.
No, it doesn't. George, do you get your crystal ball out and tell us, when that's going to happen?
I think sooner than you're saying, actually, Nick. In the live events world, many of us are using fiber now as a standard transmission line. I think and this is the case where the commercial environments will lead residential. In a lot of ways, residential has always led the commercial guys, because what residential does sort of pushes the envelope a little harder, a little faster than the commercial ones, because you have clients who want something special. They want it to do this. In commercial, we have a standard set of ways of doing things. That's a boardroom. That's a this. Aside from some little thing we have to work out and work around, it's pretty much a boilerplate systems.
Right.
You've got your DVD, you've got your content source, your monitor, your control, your lights, your teleconferencing. Done.
Yep.
Everything in between is just tweaking. But these buildings are getting fiber in them. As you said, the vertical fiber is going into a lot of these new buildings, and whenever something's retrofitted, they're putting in fiber because it will be a good future-proofing for data systems, especially here in places like New York. We are big on trying to get startups and tech firms in. What you need is fiber. And they had a lot of trouble wooing Google, because until they found a building which sat right on top of the bloody fiber hub, they were kind of doubtful. So that will lead that. And as we become more familiar with fiber in those environments, and the cost of those comes down because we're using it more, that's when you'll start to see it in residential. As to your question, Tim, a spool at Lowe's or Home Depot, 10 years, I think.
Really? And the reason I asked that, because think about it, guys. I mean, 20. The internet is 20 some odd years old, right? They made it public in the early 90s, and even back then you couldn't go to Lowe's and get a spool of Cat 5 probably. So I guess that's why I'm asking it. The way I'm asking it is when it's going to be ubiquitous enough to where guys, Home Depot guys, DIY guys, are going to be able to go and get a spool of fiber, maybe not $200, maybe $300, and get a decent cleave machine that's not going to require you to do all of the polishing and everything that they had to do 30 years ago, but a simple device to make the ends that's not going to cost you $20,000 or even $5,000. That's kind of where I'm going, because that's when guys like me that work in education, that's when we will get in on the gig. Yes, there are certain installations. You put up a new building and you can fit it into the budget, knock yourself out. Absolutely, put fiber in. But when you do retrofits, like George was saying, or you do refreshes, and you're looking at the cost, and you're like, okay, I need to do 70, 60 rooms this summer, and I have X amount of dollars, I could absolutely do fiber. But I'm not going to do 80 rooms. I'm going to do 40 or maybe even 30, depending on the cost. And so that's why I'm kind of like anxiously, patiently awaiting that and an OLED screen. So where we can get to the point with fiber that it is as ubiquitous as Cat 5, Cat 6, whatever, some sort of twisted pair infrastructure, where it's not going to be cost prohibitive, where we could do apples to apples, comparing it to copper, and then it's not a question. Then the decision is not monetary; it's performance, right? It's what do you really need for this installation?
I mean, go ahead. I mean, Nick, you might be able to answer this better than me, but in the home, it's going to take a point where it's not just the very high-end home, but it's the middle market homes that can take fiber when you'll see that happen. Exactly. When the big high-end homes were getting Cat 5 and copper systems and Ethernet-based controls or devices, the mid-market homes were not. And you still couldn't buy some of that stuff. But until it reaches that point where they're not just putting it in the 100,000 square foot homes in these big palatial communities, but in the mid-market homes, then you'll see it. Because you still got a lot of homes. Like, look at the Northeast. You don't find very many new homes in that sense. You find a lot of very old homes. And even if they've been updated to be not plaster but sheetrock and with that, and get all that middle stuff out of there, all that little 1x3s they used to use, you still aren't really wiring much in there because it just takes too much work. And the new build market has to catch up. We're in a bad economy. The housing market's still trying to get itself back up on its feet. New builds are up, so they say, but not in any way that would affect something like this. So we've got a good number of years.
Yeah, my house, for instance, was built in 2004, and the person that originally built the house with the builder, quote unquote, wired it for network and surround sound. Well, that to them that equaled 4 network drops in random places throughout the house. So even as recently as 2004, mid-market homes have been kind of lacking in technology. So yeah, exactly what you said, George. It's going to take a while for the building market to catch up. Now, one product that we have been using actually quite a bit lately, utilizing fiber, was we saw this at Infocom this last year, was the Celerity HDMI over fiber cables. It's a pre-terminated piece of fiber that you can specify up to 1,000 foot, and that each end looks like a little micro USB connector. You power it via USB on each end, and you can pull it all day long. And it's roughly the same price as doing an extender, transmitter, and receiver set using HD-based-T. It's been a really good product for us.
See, and that's what I'm talking about, where the cost then is equivalent, or, somewhat equivalent to using something else. So, I don't know. We'll get there. Trust me. From SVC Online, actually, our buddy Bennett Lyles wrote a piece about several pieces of technology furniture, but the one I'm talking about, though, is the Altenex Cable Nook, and it's a very nice piece of equipment. That's not where I'm going with this. I'm not going to slam insert. But it got me to thinking, and here's where I go with this. George, are we not are we? But when will we get, if ever, to the place where AV furniture and AV little hookups like this no longer matter? Where you know what we're wireless or somewhat wireless, to where stuff like this just doesn't do it anymore.
I think that's a bigger question than you think you asked, actually. You know, the Princess Bride? I don't think that means what you think it means.
Inconceivable.
Well, see, that's a hard question, because first you mentioned, when do we not need these things? And then you mentioned wireless. And those are very complex questions, right?
Well, they are, but don't they go hand in hand? I mean, the reason I ask that, because once we get to a stable wireless audio and video, then these little insert nooks into boardroom tables will no longer be as attractive as they are now. Or am I wrong?
Well, I mean, I've often wanted.
You can tell me I'm wrong.
Well, it's a hard one, because here's what I can say to you. You know as well as I do, and Nick knows this, and I think everybody listening knows this, that wireless communications of any sort is one of the single greatest conveniences ever bestowed upon us for installation or data transfer. It is also the most unreliable we've ever developed, right? Because it is fraught with interference issues, especially in urban or even semi-urban areas. So relying completely on all of that, when the FCC still can't get its act together on the open white spaces and selling off frequencies and getting things done 5 years after they said they'd all be sold and in operation, they're still not sold. The wired and form factor fit into a piece of furniture is still going to exist. So you want that hard wire. We still don't have wireless power. Tesla didn't make it happen, and we still can't make it happen without cooking the skin off of a rabbit. But you need these things, because we're going to continue to utilize this kind of thing. We stopped talking about fiber. Fiber's going into buildings. That's the next step, because we're still going to rely upon a quote-unquote hardwired connection. It's light, but it's still hardwired. It's still a form factor. So as much as it would be nice to say to guys like you and community colleges and the such that expense, that little added $1,000 of this GAC over and above the cost of the gear has to be installed, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Not for the reliable has to work.
Okay, so Nick, I'm going to ask you this, and George, you can interrupt if you have a thought on this. How long have we been doing wireless mics? 30 years?
Yeah,
30
safely.
ish, 40, 30-ish. Let's agree somewhere in the 80s, right? Some guys were messing around with it in the 70s, but really, we were really getting into it around the 80s. Mm-hmm. It's nothing. We think nothing of throwing, at least I don't, throwing a wireless transmitter and receiver into a system. It's just kind of something that we do, right? We turn it on, we expect it to work. It's none of this, hoo-ha, and you have to stand a certain way, and this, that, and the other. So in my elementary mind, we will eventually get there when it comes to video, because yes, the first wireless mic systems were for crap. They were fraught with all sorts of issues, and yes, currently, George, you're right, the FCC is still sitting on their hands when it comes to the frequency issues that we're having. But eventually, won't we get to the point where where we can handle the bandwidth going back and forth? I'm not talking about 8K. I'm just talking about regular 720p and sending a computer signal over the air.
I think anyone that uses the word never in that case is kidding themselves.
Well,
of course, we'll eventually get there. It's just a matter of when. Obviously, the bandwidth requirements for a single channel of audio are quite different than even a 720p or 1080p video signal with multi-channel audio and all the bells and whistles that come along with it. So, like George said, for the foreseeable future, there are going to be physical connections, which will then beget the need for furniture. And that's a battle that we constantly have with our clients. Is we're brought in to design and build a fully integrated turnkey system. And then, oh, by the way, this is the table you have to work with, and it's a solid block of some exotic walnut. and
it cost $100,000.
Exactly, to where someone's afraid to set a napkin down on top of it. So anything that manufacturers in the AV industry or associated with the AV industry can do to bring our side of things to the furniture and design table, I'm all for. It's not the sexiest product to sell, but anytime we can get our hands in earlier into the actual physical integration of what we do in a room, the better.
All right. Well, I'll just I'll develop it myself. How about that? And I'll sell it to Sennheiser.
Well, and as much as
Yes,
I'd like to get on the Apple TV / Chromecast bandwagon, I've seen what it takes to implement in a corporate environment, especially
horrible
in a corporate network with high security levels. You have to jump through more hoops than it's worth just to get signal from an iPad to a display.
Well,
by that time you could have set a laptop down on the table and connected via HDMI.
Well, it's not just the tricks that you have to do. You have to get in bed with, not in bed, but you have to play nice with the IT guys because they have to perform some tricks as well.
Exactly.
Go ahead, George.
Well, I was going to say that, first of all, you said, the video wirelessly. Do you recall what I call wireless video? Brundlefly?
Oh, yes. That's been a few years.
It can work, but it's all about proximity, isn't it? In a house where I'm sending it from the box downstairs to the master bedroom upstairs, sure. But if we're talking a campus, you're really relying now on microwave. I mean, there are campuses that use microwave to transmit stuff between buildings and stuff, but that's really expensive technology.
No.
I mean, it makes fiber look cheap, right?
Yeah, it does.
Comparatively. But that's where it comes down to. I mean, and you also need the ergonomics. Let's even not pass up that. A lot of these pieces of furniture, a lot of these these systems are made so it's not just a clutter on the side. It's not just this wireless box Velcroed to the top of an existing piece of furniture or a desk. In many cases, it's designed to increase your workflow and make the workflow work right. So there is an advantage there. Absolutely.
No, then that's valid. Absolutely. I'll still develop it myself. You're listening to AV Week. That gentleman right there that I'm arguing with is George Tucker. Also, this is Nick Miller from Onsite AV. This is from Lifehacker. 6 sweet things you can automate with NFC and your Android phone. That's the article we're going to reference here. But George, what we're really going to talk about are just the fact that NFC, and by the way, iPhone still doesn't have it. Sorry. Are we to a point where we're going to be able to start not tracking you, because that's libertarian in me just hates that, but you walk into a room or a professor walks into a classroom and the control system senses that it's Professor Jones and does all the presets and lowers the screen and does that and this, that, and the other. Are we to the point yet where control systems are going to be able to start interacting with NFC?
I think we're already there.
Okay.
I think a number of NFC devices let you do certain things at this point. Look at the scientific and research community with their little ID tags. A lot of times they just need to put it up against the door and the lights turn on and the equipment does what it's supposed to do and some stuff like that. So it's not a far stretch that NFC technology and readers could be implemented. I mean, again, it's just a string coming out at the end, right? So it's something we can parse and tell what to do with. I just, as to acceptance, again, iPhone's the 800 gorilla in the room. They're with their, what is it called, drop air or airdrop or something of that nature they're calling it. So maybe it won't be NFC. Maybe it'll be airdrop or drop air. But I think we are getting very close to my dream of having one device in my pocket that does everything I need it to do on at least that basis. We can have the argument about, you want a physical thing in your hand for doing a specific feature at certain times, like controlling the TV. But I really like that idea that NFC or something like it will allow us to have a common device that allows us to control things and make it work the way we want it to without having to really find a button or find a switch.
Yeah, we're absolutely there already. The current crop of AMX touch panels have NFC readers built into them. We're already implementing specific UI changes in our systems depending on who badges into the system, doing things like that. So you have a technical admin that walks into a boardroom to set up a meeting. They get every bell and whistle that imaginable. They check out and let the CEO walk up to the room, and one button for start is presented. So we're already there in that regard. And beyond that, NFC tags with Android phones, they're cheap. They're about $0.25 a piece. I've got them stuck all around my house, and I've been doing some experimentation with, let's say, things like brushing my phone up against the security keypad right inside the door. Instead of entering in my PIN, it not only disarms the security system, it reads what time of day it is, okay? Turn on the lights, turn on music, turn on the TV to a specific channel, doing those sorts of things automatically depending on whether it's my phone, my wife's phone, like I said, what time of day, all those sorts of things. So we're there in the developmental stage. I think it's just a matter of time before it starts rolling out to at least the higher end systems.
Is it an issue, the fact that the N in NFC stands for near? I mean, is it where like the doorway is going to have to be charged with something, and as you walk through, it's going to be able to read, or are we still going to be stuck with, there's a plate somewhere that you have to take your phone up to?
For the time being, the tags that I'm using are completely passive, so they can be stuck anywhere. But okay. It is a physical contact between your device and the tag, and let's be honest, it's not just tap it against it and walk away. There's a couple seconds there where it has to verify and read the tag, and so it's not without its pitfalls. But I think the dream, as George was talking about, is getting closer and closer.
Yeah. Well, I also think that the near field is what you want. You want it to be near. Maybe not to the point where you have to touch the actual physical plate that the receiver is on. And like my Speed Pass, Mobile One Speed Pass. As you said, Nick, I have to hold it up there and hold it not too far away, but not too close, and for a couple of seconds for it to light up and say, yes, this is active. I've had to do it a couple times where I put it up, it lit, I pulled it away too fast, and it just shut it right back down again. So I think for your libertarian fears and your libertarian idealism that you reference, this is what you want if we're going to go this way, because then it cannot be hijacked as easily. I mean, Bluetooth can be hijacked, anything can be hijacked. But this gives a measure of protection so that you don't have to worry about it broadcasting everywhere or someone rolling up and being able to read it unless they're right on top of you.
George, you've obviously never worked with a professor before. Yes, I want it to be instantaneous.
Yeah, well.
And for all practical purposes, let's say in your house, if you were walking from room to room with your device, triggering different things one after another just because you're walking from room to room with something in your pocket, it's going to get overwhelming and a little bit obnoxious at some point. Whereas if you have a small tag on your nightstand that you just set your phone on at the end of the night and it shuts down the entire house, turns on night lights, does that sort of thing, that is a relatively passive action that you can do that bears a whole lot of control.
Yeah, that makes sense too. I still want it instantaneous for the professors though. ProAudioCentral.com. This is not a commercial, but it was something cool that kind of caught my eye. They have something called Pass, the Pro Audio Social Stream. They have an Apple app for it now, and it allows you to connect your Pass profile to a Facebook account. And I don't know if you guys got a chance to read the whole thing. It's kind of interesting. And, well, it's a social network for AV guys, for AV people. Nick, did you get a chance to check it out, and what did you think?
I read the article. I don't have an iOS device to check it out, but my impression was, have we reached social media saturation yet when we have social networks inside of social networks? While I love being able to interact with industry people, I think this is a solution looking for a problem at some point.
Wheels within wheels, Nick. Wheels within wheels. George, is Nick right? We've got social networks inside of social networks. Was this kind of cool?
I think it's actually kind of cool. I see Nick's point that it becomes a lot of white noise, but this is a very specific This is a very specific grouping that you'd want that information from. So you join groups on LinkedIn because you want to be able to communicate and see ideas about what you want, not just the general news that's happening, say like on Twitter with your followers or anybody you follow. And to that end, when you guys say wheels within wheels, remember wheels within wheels actually means clockwork to me.
Oh.
I see clockwork, which means I have a way of relating things and connecting them and reacting to things that I wouldn't have had otherwise if that wheel within a wheel wasn't there. So, yes, it can be a lot of white noise, but if this is what you want, and I knew nothing about PASS, and I still know very little about it at this juncture, even after the article, I think that more organizations and more industries getting that type of communication that encapsulate it in one side, which is sort of isolating back to the old BBS days, but also gives you that ability to expand it out to a larger audience or a larger set of contacts, is what you want from that. Because the more information, the more people know about that kind of industry, even some of the infighting, the better off they are about thinking, oh, I do want that from my home. Oh, that is a technology that we probably should utilize. So I don't have an issue with it at all.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool. So, last but not least, I'm not really sure. This is just kind of to let you guys know, and if you want to comment on it, cool. Shure launches an industry education challenge. Dun, dun, dun. I need to tell my buddy Michael about this. Michael is a rep for Sennheiser, so maybe they should step up to the challenge. The manufacturer will match combined donations to the NSCA Education Foundation up to $25,000. Quote, our company has always placed a high priority on being a good corporate citizen, said Sandy LaMantia, president and CEO of Shure. It's something that Mr. Shure established from the very beginning of the company and today remains as one of the core values. We are also deeply committed to education. George, we have talked about education on this show almost since episode 1. This is, for me, and I'm not going to get into what microphones I like or whatever. I'm using an EV320 for crying out loud. This is something cool, and regardless of the manufacturer, regardless of the products that they sell, a manufacturer is stepping up and saying, you know what, guys, education is important in this industry. Staying on top of things and staying informed and staying educated, well past your CTSD or whatever certifications you have to stay abreast of what's going on in this industry. I think that is something that is commendable, at least, regardless of what they sell. I think it's commendable for sure to do this.
Absolutely. I do agree with you, and that major manufacturers getting behind it in a major way with a major organization, I think, is a good thing as well. The thing I love about this is that they say they're reaching out to students. And again, I may not have read this as completely as I should have, but I don't think it was talking about high school students. I think it was talking about college level students, which is a great thing. First of all, we need more youth in this industry. Lord knows we need more youth in this industry. And I want something even more, though. I would love to see Shure and NSCA and the other organizations reach out to the high school students. Because here's something that I've noticed with these things is that when you give them these skills, especially even in the college, even the guys in the industry, when you start to teach them, the one big thing that a lot of these guys fear, of course, is the dreaded math part, right? Mm-hmm. Even when you're talking digital math, which is just a truth table, and they all get up, everybody, even the older guys get all cringy. It's like math, oh no. But if you remember taking math in high school, unless you were really, really into math or you just had a natural aptitude for it, they gave you examples of things that just didn't really have an application in your world. Ergo, the high school students' common complaint, never going to use this stuff once I graduate, man. Why not making me learn it? Well, I don't know if I had quite that attitude, but when I went to trade school and they started on algebra, it was after they had taught me about all the other physical stuff that I needed to know about. Angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection, or reflection is equal to the angle of incidence. All this math that when they brought in the algebra and some of the geometry, it made sense finally. And if you can find a way to get these kind of lessons into high school via Shore, via these companies, and be able to teach the math, but also have a whole potential stream of new people who would be interested in getting into the integration or AV world because of that, I think is a win-win situation, no matter how you slice it.
It would be interesting. I'm aware of a couple of different types of programs throughout different high schools, at least in our area. Years ago, when I was in high school, they were called trade schools or trade programs. And it's something where, when I was in high school, that's where I got involved in AV for the first time in my life. It was theater, but it was still theater is an extension of AV, and you can argue with me about that later if you want. But that's where I was first introduced to a soundboard and to a light board and to, doing different things with all that. And you're right, George. If someone would have said, you know what, here's some algebra and here's an application for it, I think that would be a big boom. So, all right, guys, that is our last story for the week. Thank you so much for joining us. Nick Miller has been here. He is the systems designer and programmer for Onsite AV. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people find you?
On Google Plus and Twitter handle is Nick Mill, Nickmil.
Yeah, Nick is actually one of the more prolific Google Plusers that I know. He's on in a couple of my circles, and he always has something. Also, George Tucker has been here. He is the engineering coordinator for World Stage and the left side of my brain.
Which is unfortunate for you.
Jeez.
Hey, you saying it.
I know.
Yes.
How can
and as
people
everyone
find
knows, if it's on social media, I'm there. It's Tucker2s, Tuckertues. And I am everywhere else. I write. You'll find me.
You write. Shit, whatever.
Yeah.
You can't read, but he can write like the Dickens.
That's true.
My name is Tim Albright. If you want to follow me, it's TD, Tim David Albright, on Twitter. But more importantly, please go by the website. The guys that do it are working awfully hard on it. It's getting better. How about that? It's not quite done yet, so please excuse our mess. AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. I was joking with George at the beginning of the show. He is producing a number of other ones. We've got 2 brand new projector shows, a Pico projector show as well as Projection Freak with Jeff Gooch. Also coming up next week, DIY. We have a new one of those, an education-based podcast called EdTech, social media, all sorts of other things. Please go by the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. It's all the time we have for AV Week.